This video is meant to explore one of my life's greatest mysteries, a topic that I have been ruminating over ever since I was old enough to tell my mom that I didn't want to wear a dress to my cousin's bar mitzvah. And so the questions of the day are, what is menswear? And if menswear is so widely integrated into women's modern-day clothing and so socially acceptable for women to wear, what does it mean for a woman to wear menswear? What does it look like? Clothing itself does not have gender, right? Anybody can wear any type of clothing. Clothing, however, historically and to today, has been used to communicate gender, to communicate socioeconomic class, culture, sexuality, all sorts of things. I do think in our modern day, the meanings behind these things and behind these messages have been disrupted more and more. They're being reformed, recontextualized. People are pushing against those meanings, right? And so that's why I think this is an important conversation to have. Even though all clothing is technically unisex, clothing is designed with a particular body type in mind. And that is still a sort of narrow body type of what a female body is shaped like, what a male body is shaped like. Obviously, people don't really fall neatly into those categories, so that's a problem in itself. But that is why we have these gendered categories, right? It's kind of a marketing thing. You want to make clothing for a type of person, you want to market it to that type of person, and then hopefully that person will wear those clothes and be happy and look good. One last thing, my little pet peeve, is that I don't think we can describe clothing as androgynous. A person can be androgynous in the way they style themselves and the way they wear their clothing. They may be of indeterminate sex or gender. However, the clothing itself is not androgynous in the way that a suit is not necessarily more androgynous than a dress. You feel me? Since menswear, of course, we've decided is not just for men, and a lot of modern women's clothing is derived from garments that were originally designed with men in mind. Like, for example, I don't know about this tie, but the jacket and my shirt that I'm wearing, I think were designed for women originally. However, I would say I'm wearing them in a menswear style. Of course, you can also go from the other side and say that women's wear is not just for women, right? How many men have you seen post about how you should shop in the women's pants section of Uniqlo? So where does that leave us? What does wearing menswear mean then? I think for me, it's a little bit more of an attitude than something literal, a little bit more about how clothes hang off the body, and also how you want to be perceived. When I Googled menswear for women, a lot of the content that came up was like how to wear menswear in a feminine way, right? How to wear a oversized blazer as a dress, how to wear a tie as a scarf, things like that. That is obviously literally women wearing menswear, but I don't think it evokes the same attitude. For me personally, wearing menswear I think has to do with creating structure in my clothing and wearing things that are just a little less body conscious. So I want to show some of my favorite examples of what I think it looks like for women to be wearing menswear in this modern day and age. So at this point in the video, you're probably imagining menswear as pretty classic European and men's suiting. And I want to blow that open with these first two influencers because they do streetwear and a mix of other different styles, but they're very modern, but they're also mask, or I'm not sure how they self-identify, but they dress in a mask style. The first influencer I would highly, highly suggest following, her name is Jade Fox. She self-describes her style as off-duty rich lesbian fits, but with a streetwear influence. She has a pretty wide range in terms of style, but it does feel really cohesive, which I think is super impressive. She has some minimalism to her. She also does some archive fashion. I think she has a pair of Rick sneakers. And her content does an amazing job of giving specific tips and tricks for other people who are trying to dress in mask styles. The next person I want to talk about, I don't know if she's necessarily an influencer. I think she's a German DJ who just has an amazing Instagram presence, but I'm not sure. Her name is Dani. She also has a streetwear style to her. She's very focused on footwear, on sneakers. She loves sneakers. I feel like you can tell that she's European. She has a little bit more of a European style going on, but overall, amazing, amazing clothes, beautiful outfits, 10 out of 10. The last two influencers I want to shout out are in the more traditional suiting world. The first is Cléa. She's actually a pretty small account, but she does amazing, amazing classic menswear. It feels like a much more vintage vibe and maybe even a little bit Italian in how long the blazers are and how wide the shoulders are, but everything looks like it fits her immaculately. I would love to know where she's getting her clothes, how she gets them to fit, etc. This last influencer, Brit Bones, she does a little bit more of a mix of feminine and masculine in her style, but she does really beautiful, like, Savile Row tailoring. She recently got some stuff bespoke. She got, I think, a handmade shirt and maybe a handmade suit, She also just posted that she's attending Pitti Uomo this year, which is an Italian menswear trade show, the most notorious as far as I know, but I think that is a real indication that she considers herself part of the menswear community. I would love to go one day. It's in Florence. So let's talk about me. I'm also an influencer, and I also wear menswear, and my style of menswear, as you guys know, or if you don't, you may be new here, is focused specifically on this Japanese Americana style. Feel free to watch my other videos if you want to know more, but the long and short of it is, after World War II, the Japanese fashion scene was heavily shaped by the American style that they were seeing both with GIs in their country and that people were traveling to the US and seeing in that country. They were taking all sorts of styles, workwear styles, military styles, and repurposing them through a Japanese lens. And the reason I think it has worked so well for me, and I would suggest it for other people who have more traditional female body types, is that the silhouettes are just enlarged. It's just a more oversized look than a lot of the classically European or American styles. And the reason I think that works so much better is because, women oftentimes, not always, are a little curvier. We're not physically shaped the way that men are typically shaped. I do actually have pretty broad shoulders and generally slim hips, but I also have proportionally a smaller waist and a bigger butt and thighs. So for me, buying pants in either menswear or women's wear styles is really difficult. I find my proportions are just not conducive to what designers have in mind. However, if you buy something that is meant to be oversized, really the only thing you need to worry about is the waist measurement. And I know my waist measurement, so if I just buy a 29 or 30 and the rest of the pants are big, then I'm not so worried about them fitting on my butt or my thighs. And this Japanese Americana style has a lot of balloon pants, a lot of barrel jeans, these sorts of more exaggerated bottoms that just generally fit me better and more consistently, less complaints, more comfortable. There are all sorts of pluses. The jackets and button-downs are also generally made with wider silhouettes, which, makes it easier to hide a bust if you are trying to hide your bust, or at least that, you won't be popping out if that's an issue for you generally. It's not necessarily an issue for me, but there are all sorts. And I think for me, the real plus is that you get a shape and drape effect. Shape and drape is something that I'm stealing from a very iconic piece of writing by Dye Workwear. His name is Derek Guy, I believe, the guy behind Dye Workwear. He has a blog, he has a Twitter. A lot of you have probably seen his stuff online before. He wrote this thread that was about the loss of shape and drape. Honestly, I could just read it for you now. He starts off with, "Have you ever felt that the average person dressed better in the past? IMO. The reason has nothing to do with respectability, body shape, or even suits. It has to do with the loss of what I call shape and drape." So he talks about what shape and drape means. It's essentially the shape is the shape you're creating on someone's body, and the drape is how the clothes physically hang off the body or off the shape that you've created. Drape can also refer to movement of the fabric. Now, the reason that I personally think a lot about shape and drape is because if you are trying to transform your maybe more feminine body type into something that is more masculine, and let's say the masculine ideals, so a body type that is boxier, that is flatter, what helps you do that? You have to create shape with your clothing because your body doesn't naturally have that shape. So you have to have things that have bigger shoulders and then hang straight down, or you have to have things that hang straight off of your hips instead of curving around them or curving to, keep them in mind. There are all sorts of body types in this world, and even for men do this too. The reason we have those shapes originally, not all men have broad shoulders, you padded out your shoulder pads to give you the illusion of broad shoulders. We're all trying to, less and less in these days, but we were all traditionally trying to create shapes. That's why we had bustles, to create a more feminine shape. If you wanted a more feminine shape historically, you would make your waist smaller by making the bottom or the top half look bigger. It's actually a trick that I heard Beyonce uses in a lot of her concert outfits, right? She makes her waist seem smaller by exaggerating her shoulders. So this is sort of, to me, the magic of clothing, the thing that gives it so much interest and intrigue. Let's say I do have a day where I want to feel more masculine, and so I want to dress to that. I want to create that masculine shape with my clothing. If there is a day where I want to create more feminine shapes with my body, then I have the opportunity to do that as well. But if I'm only ever playing with my body shape, I don't have a lot of space for transformation. So that's a little bit about my philosophy. I do think oversized clothing is trendy in general right now, and brands are putting that silhouette out on the shelves because of that. However, I do think there's some interesting changes and interesting work that some of my favorite brands are doing to approach this issue, that certain styles, classic menswear, classic womenswear styles, are no longer specifically tied to gender. So it's not like all women are wearing womenswear styles or all men are wearing menswear styles anymore. There's a little bit more of a pick and choose that a lot of people are doing. So some brands like Studio Nicholson, which is one of my favorites, and I believe Jade Fox also has a couple pieces from them, have a very classic woman and men's section. Between the women's and the men's section, the silhouettes are very similar. However, obviously for the women's section, they have more dresses, more skirts, more handbags. For 7 stores, they also have a women's and a men's section. However, they do have a button where you can just shop all, which I really like because since I usually look in both sections, both on secondhand retailer sites or in person, it just makes it easier to mix it all together so I don't have to be checking 2 different places every time. As far as I can tell, the main difference is that some of the women's wear is a little bit more cropped, so it seems like some of these hoodies are hitting more at the waist rather than the hips. Usually menswear shirts or jackets, etc. go to the hips. But I find that a lot of men these days are into cropped silhouettes on top, cropping their t-shirts, cropping their jackets. They want things to be a little higher. Though the streetwear style, the streetwear aesthetic has always been about a bigger, longer shirt, and the Japanese streetwear style is as well. Most of the shirts that Japanese men wear, button-downs, go lower, much lower. Some stores have done away with gendered categories altogether. They are unisex brands. About Blank is one of them. I love their stuff, and they just have it sectioned by what the clothing is. So you can look at all the t-shirts, all the hoodies, all the knitwear, all the shorts, just everything together. It does seem like most of their models are men. I would put their clothing more in the menswear or mask style. Another brand in this style is Sage Nation, again, a unisex brand that I would say focuses more on menswear, in that there are no dresses, there are no skirts, there are no purses, it's mostly pants, shirts, sweaters, jackets. And all of their clothing has the same sort of oversized, again, boxy fit. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Another brand that focuses on these oversized silhouettes is Siage. As far as I can tell, they don't say what gender they consider their clothing to be for, but they also don't say it's like unisex or genderless. Gosh, they have such nice stuff. I am trying to find some pictures of their models. Oh, okay, they have what seems like a man and a woman here, so that says something. But I still would consider these 3 brands to be focusing on more traditional menswear styles and silhouettes. When I was in Japan, a lot of men were dressing like this, but as far as I can tell, and they have pretty strict gender rules, women did not really dress in these silhouettes in Japan. I wanted to shout out one more brand which I really love called Everybody World. They also embrace a sort of genderless or unisex organization on their site. However, as opposed to those other brands, they do have more form-flattering options. So they don't say like, these are for women, these are for men. They'll just say like, this is a baby tee, this is a fitted tee, this is a boxier tee, you know? And it can look however it looks on the model, but you are getting that information about the way it might fit you and your body, but it doesn't say what gender it's for. I feel like we're drifting away from the menswear tilt to this video, but I did want to shout out a couple of more brands that are not unisex. They seem like they're marketed specifically to women and marketing menswear specifically to women. You want to wear a button down, you're having trouble finding sizing, this is for you. These brands are not necessarily my personal style, but I think they do an amazing job of first like sizing inclusivity and also just specifically marketing menswear, traditional menswear, to women or non-men. Kieran Finch looks like a great company if you're trying to wear a suit to a wedding. Wildfang, I think, is a little bit more on the casual side. They have some great coveralls and overalls. Walker Slater actually has a women's and men's section, and they're a Scottish company that focuses on this sort of UK style of traditional clothing, so they're also a great place to look. I don't necessarily think there's a wrong way or a right way for brands to go about this. This is a tricky thing to navigate. I think we're at a specific period in time where things are changing very rapidly and we're sort of letting go of older ways of doing things. And what people decide is the next thing we're going to decide individually and together. My biggest gripe is because I shop on eBay. I really am annoyed by having to search the men's section and the women's section separately. I wish it was like a thing you could toggle off and on. Like if you went to t-shirts, I wish you could do women's t-shirts and men's t-shirts. You know, this sizing, this color, etc. And don't even let me get into shoe sizing. Like, why are they different sizes? Are people's feet inherently shaped differently? I don't think so. It does feel easier and more acceptable and more accessible for women to wear menswear styles today than any time in recent history. However, I do find there are still some issues. When I walk into a menswear store, I still find that oftentimes their smallest sizes maybe a little too tight at the shoulders and a little too long. Like they just go weirdly over the butt to the thighs and they're too narrow. That's like a very common sizing issue I think most people will have if they go into a menswear store. Again, that's why I have veered more towards those oversized silhouettes. However, there is one point I want to put forward. I'm 5'7", which is not a rare height for a man to be. I might have a big butt, but there are men in my family who have big butts and big thighs, and there are men who work out consistently who have big butts and big thighs. And so the thing I want to sort of get at is that I think sizing in general is still fairly inaccessible. There's just a really narrow idea of what type of person clothing is meant to fit, whether that be a female body type or a male body type, whatever it is. And to that point, I just feel like we can band together a little bit about this. Like, you can Google men's slacks big thighs and you'll find a Reddit thread full of men discussing what pants they wear to work that accommodate their bigger thighs. I don't think it necessarily always has to be a sort of male body versus female body issue. You have men who are 5'2", 5'3", 5'4". They want to wear menswear usually too. So, I just feel like if we all sort of increase the accessibility, increase the range of styles that a whole host of people can wear, we're all going to benefit. And we can also use each other as resources to figure out these problems. The other thing I want to generally mention when it comes to fit issues is that I think there are generally two ways to go about it. Since it can be tough to walk into any random menswear store and find stuff that fits you, what I do is thrift. I buy almost all my clothes secondhand, including everything you see here. So generally I'll look in both the women's and men's section. I find what fits me, what style I like, what, general hang or fabric or whatever, and if there's something a little off, I just get it tailored. Sometimes you have to thrift something that's pretty close and just accept that you're going to have to get it tailored. Because the truth of the matter is, men have to get stuff tailored all the time as well. Most nice suits are tailored, right? A lot of classic, beautiful, well-fitting men's clothing was either bespoke or tailored. To that point, I want to shout out again in terms of resources, Dani Workwear, one of the most amazing writers on menswear I think there is. He's fairly well known. There's another TikTok account that I found, which I think is so funny. It's called Ask Oki. I believe they do digital bespoke menswear services, but Prof, the guy who's featured in most of these videos, has very, very specific opinions about how menswear should fit. Sometimes he gets lit up in these comments because he's, trashing men for wearing these little tiny skinny ankle pants that he doesn't like. He's the king of shape and drape. So just an amazing account with a lot of ideas, a lot of resources. Finally, I have accepted Reddit into my heart. It's just an amazing resource. You can Google almost any issue you have and you may find solutions there. The male fashion advice thread or channel, I don't even know what they're called, but it is a great place to look up all sorts of things about menswear. This is a very complex topic, and I think I just want to finish off by saying that it still feels like to me that as a woman who wears menswear or her dresses more masculine in her everyday life, it still feels a little alternative, a little counterculture, because let's say at a wedding or other formal events, most women wear women's wear, right? If you're wearing a suit or something particularly more masculine, you're not in the majority in that situation. And that's perfectly fine. For me, I very much like the way I dress. I feel comfortable in it. I'm only looking forward to exploring menswear and what it means to me more and more. And I think a lot of people who wear menswear, women, non-men, men, we're all looking forward to how the industry has changed and will change more. So thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what your experience has been, any tips and tricks you use, what you love, what annoys you about being someone who wears menswear if you don't have the typical body type that menswear is designed for. I'd love to hear about it.